remember all the things I get screwed out of before.
Okay, there's a bunch of seats up here in the front. So we should try to get together and start this. We said 6 o'clock and we should start. We're already a few minutes late. We're going to talk about the finances. It seems to me that there might be a concern that those rich guys are making money off of me. I'm going to show you where we are financially. Operating costs, almost $19 million. Why does it cost $19 million? There's all kinds of shit you pay for. If you have a friggin' business, when you open it up, you turn the goddamn lights on, it costs. Traveling cost. My fucking salary cost. I'd like you to try to add some of this shit up because you may find, I may be wrong about this, but you may find we're spending more than we're making, which means a loss of revenue. And we need to begin to recognize that our value is limited unless we do things to push our value up. The average number of viewing households in America this last year, the PBA was ahead of the National Hockey League, ahead of the LPGA, ahead of the X Games, and ahead of MLS soccer. Now, a dose of reality. For a commercial of 30 seconds, we get about $4,000. Our ratings are better than these people. Do you know what the National Hockey League gets for a 30-second spot? $15,000 minimum. Why? Because they have value. Why is it real value? It's perceived value. Bowling, our sport, has had no unified message. What is the message in bowling? Have fun? Have a beer? What was the message for bowling? How do you talk to consumers? You have to have a coordinated, well-placed, understood message. And two of our messages this year are going to be only one can win and the march to the World Championship. Why? Because we need to build equity in the World Championship. It has to be a focus. I want you to feel good about who you are. I want you to go to a motel and check in or a hotel and check in, and when they say, what do you do for a living? I want you to tell them. As opposed to some people who I've checked in behind who didn't tell them. Because you don't feel good about yourselves. I want you to feel good about yourself. I may tell you a bunch of shit you don't want to hear, but I'm not going to lie to you. And don't think for a second I don't care about this, because I care a great deal. But I want you to care just as much. And if you don't like being told, if you don't like it, don't bowl, then I'm sorry. That's not fair. I have the right to play. You don't have a right to do anything. You are being given a privilege because of your skills. Let me just close with one last comment. Together, we got a chance. Separately, we have no fucking chance whatsoever. So either we're in this together or you can kiss my ass. Thanks. Have a good day, fellas.
Gosh, this is Peter GODINEZ, and we just watched one of my favorite clips on the internet. My mentor, Coach Steve Miller, who I have the privilege of having some time with right here. And so, Coach Miller, welcome, and thank you for spending this time with me.
No, I'm appreciative, and thank you, Peter. I think you're doing some great work, and hopefully the message has some effect on a variety of people. So
I think it will, Coach Miller. I really think it will. So again, the audience who just clicked on had a chance to watch a presentation, a speech that you gave to the professional bowlers that you were leading, and it was quite a speech. And I must have sent this particular clip out to so many people in the last 10 years, Coach Miller. I probably should pay you royalties or something like that. But that it was so powerful. And as you saw in the clip, I had some key points that I'd love to ask you some questions. And
sure.
I always had the vision of, yes, these are professional bowlers, but what if you took those bowlers out and put these professional salespeople who are trying to figure out what to do in this crazy pandemic timeframe we're going through. So
Right.
if you will, I got some questions, and I'd like to just start chopping wood, as Quincy Jones would say. And one of the first things you talk about is, we recognize that value is limited by the things we push our value up. Did you want to kind of comment as to what you meant in regards to that?
Well, I think that the most important thing is continuity of message. I think the reality is that if I can use an old Nike example, when I used to speak to groups at Nike, we would talk about, the excellent leadership and the outstanding people that were there. But the truth is that the connection between the consumer and the company was generally done over the phone. So the people that answered the phone needed to understand our mission, objectives, and goals, and also needed to have a continuous and unabridged view and understanding of what we were trying to do. So the person that was on the phone calling in would probably not meet Phil Knight, would probably not meet any of the senior executives. So the person on the phone became Nike. They became the company. And I think what we learned is how important it is that the messaging that you do when you have communication with consumers or with people you're trying to convince to buy something or anything else, that the message is similar and always on point, so that you're not finding out that, boy, I thought this was true and now I'm finding out that this other is true. So I think one of the things that salespeople need to do is to make sure there's continuity of messaging, which I think is critically important.
I think that was a good response to the question. And again, I think a lot of people who are watching this know who you are, but you definitely spent some time being, which I call second in charge of Nike, working with Phil Knight. And so that was a really good quote on that. But one of the things I have found fascinating in this presentation, Coach Miller, is you talk about real value versus perceived value. And you can talk long about that subject, but what did you want your audience to actually know in this regards? And what would you say to salespeople, in regards to that statement?
Well, I think that that today's circumstance that we find ourselves in is probably a good example of real versus perceived. I think if you hear a message often enough, and you don't have a lot of validation to the message, it becomes kind of a perceived value. It's not anything based on a series of facts or information that gives you some accountability. Real value is accountability. What happened? What did you do? What was the outcome? And what was the effect? So I do think in conversations, we sometimes, and even reading a newspaper or reading a book, we'll read about something and just assume that person that made that comment, it knows what they're talking about. So as a result, it's more perceived than real. It's more perceived than reality. I think reality is information backed up by accountability and facts and things that you can measure. So measurable issues are more reality and perceived issues are more discussion.
Okay, that's really powerful in regards to the message. So when you talk about a unified message, how important is that for a sales professional to make an effort in creating a unified message with the people in that particular person's environment?
Well, it's actually critical. I think as I used the example early on about calling up Nike and either making a complaint or wanting something to find something out, the person on the phone becomes your connection to the company, and how they respond is frequently an impression of the company. Well, in the situation you're talking about in terms of sales, even though most salespeople are kind of a one-man or one-woman shop, They have a company that they're representing or a group that they're representing, and it's critical that the messaging of the individual salesperson is the same as the people that work for him or her, so that the messaging is unified, is similar, and is repeatable. And it gives people confidence to know that not only am I hearing it from this, but it's supported by these other conversations and these other things that I've read or seen. So validation of message and continuity of message, even though I keep repeating the same thing, is extraordinarily important.
No, I would agree with you, Coach Miller. One of the questions that one of the statements that you made was building equity. And so how is it that a person who chooses to be in the sales profession, how do they go about building equity to their audience?
Well, it's really, first of all, it's really important. Equity is critical. It not only substantiates what you're doing, but it's something that is tangible to the people you're talking to. When people make cold calls, they either have to have something to say very quickly to give themselves credibility, and that credibility over a period of time, if you bring in a lot of people as purchasers of whatever it is you're selling, that gives you equity. Equity is two things. It's really scalability. Is what we're doing scalable? In other words, what I'm offering you is something that can be offered to anybody, anywhere in the United States or globally. And is it sustainable? Are the things I'm telling you, or what I'm telling you, is it going to be here in 3 years? Is it going to be here in 5 years? So people want to know that they're engaged in something that is a model for other things and is also sustainable. Because what people don't want to do, as an example, is buy an insurance policy, for example, that gives you a certain amount of satisfaction, and you feel comfortable, et cetera, et cetera. You know, our numbers will never change. You can do this without a physical, et cetera, et cetera. But at the end of the day, are you going to be here in 2 years? Are you going to be here in 3 years? Are you going to be here? And is this business sustainable? And am I going to be part of something that has longevity? Because people want to know how what you're doing or saying to them affects them. We all are creatures of understanding what affects other people, but we're continually looking for things that affect us. And if you can create a message that says, this is for you, this is something specifically for you, and these factors can validate the fact that we're going to be here and that we're growing, and you could be part of this.
No, I mean, just to build, Coach, what you're saying in the trailer of this particular movie, there's a little small clip of you, and you can tell that you're working out and you're fired up, and you basically are saying we must build credibility. Does that fall in line to what you're talking about in terms of doing activity on a daily basis to be dealing with credibility?
Well, credibility is a term. I think the strict, definition of credibility is that you've done something that people can find noble, or they find it, valuable, et cetera, et cetera. I think how you present yourself as a salesperson, how you articulate what your ability to be the command of the language, your ability to give people the thought that I'm talking to you and not someone else, their engagement, their feeling about what you're doing, they feel personally, personally affected, and they feel that you have a vested interest in them. I think one of the things that was most interesting to me, even though this is a kind of a far-fetched or something that a lot of people wouldn't have the opportunity, that I had, but I have spent time with President Clinton, who is one of the really great communicators in the world. Forget about whether you like his politics or don't. But at the end of the day, he was a person that looked you straight in the eye, and he gave you information that was pertinent to you. So his background and whoever helped him with that information about you made you feel as if you were the only person in the room. So when you get that feeling and you feel that that person really cares, that's part of credibility. They are someone who understands you. And then credibility, going back to the beginning again, is based on continual accountability and measurables. Can I measure what this person has done? Can I measure how he or she has been successful? Can I see that it has been accounted for? And as a result, I feel comfortable with the information they've given me, and it's not just hearsay or an addendum to the information, but specific to outcome. And that's the gaining of credibility. The interesting thing about credibility and accountability is that it's sustainable, because a lot of the things that happen in sales are organic in nature. In other words, people talk to other people. I had this experience with that person. I had this experience as an outcome. And as a result, what ends up happening is you internalize that, you begin to validate it because someone you know feels the same way. It gives you a sign of credibility, indelibility, and confidence.
I think that was very well stated, Coach. You know, and again, in building on that, one of the things that you say in this clip, and you, even as a young athlete training under your leadership as being a former decathlete, you really were trying to teach your athletes how to talk to other people, tell them who you are, what you do. And that's what you were trying to tell these professional bowlers, is when you're in line ready to check in and somebody somehow gives you contact, you know, tell them who you are. And,
Right.
you know, how important is that? Again, being in sales, you have to be able to step up and tell people in an interesting, fascinating way, not too intimidating, but again, talk to that particular activity that you were training young athletes back in the mid 70s.
Well, I think that the most important issue, Peter, is self-image, and the way you present yourself is really graded by the people that you talk to. They want to know that you're somebody they can count on. They want to know that you can represent them effectively. And the truth of the matter is, if you can't represent yourself in a credible fashion, it's very, very difficult to exude confidence. So I think that that being an athlete, as an example, or an entertainer, or someone who is interviewed frequently, and salespeople are in fact interviewed all the time. Every time you have a connection with someone, they're interviewing you. You're interviewing them, and they're interviewing you. So you're looking for articulation. How does that person feel about themselves? Did they exude confidence? Did they articulate things that meant something to me? So the trick in all of this, and maybe the trick is the wrong word, but the reality in all of this is, not only do you articulate your abilities in terms of performance, but you articulate your personality and your abilities in terms of communication. So from my perspective, I've always felt that the athletes that competed, under my tutelage or under my leadership, were not only able to perform athletically, but were able to perform in terms of communication. Were able to perform in terms of explaining issues, and they were much more than one-dimensional. Because what most consumers feel is, oh my God, here's just another salesperson. Here's another person giving me information. It's another person doing this. And one of the keys to sales one of the keys to communication is differentiation, is your ability to not say what everybody else says, but find your own footing. And when you have your own footing, it gives you more confidence. It allows you to appear more confident, and it allows you to articulate in a more confident fashion. I know that you can read multiple books about the same kind of information, but the reason they're written in multiple books is because they're true. And at the end of the day, the way you feel about yourself is communicated really effectively. Let me give you just one short example. I taught school for 20 years, both in the high school and in the university. And one of the things that was most recognizable to me was students, whether you think they're paying attention or not, or whether you think they're engaged or not, the moment you make a mistake, they're as attentive as you can be. So as a result, if you say something that's out of the ordinary, they seize on it immediately. So a salesperson has got to have his or her act together, understand what they're communicating, see if they can find a point of differentiation, and make the person you're talking to feel as if he or her is the only person in the world. And we're having this conversation, and this conversation is for you and I'm going to prove my ability by performing, by measurables, and by accountability.
No, very well stated. And one of the things I want to build on, and this thing I'd love to ask you about, but while I was training to be a decathlete for you, Coach, I was actually trying to pursue a business marketing degree. And then when I realized what marketing is, it's the 4 Ps. Maybe I'm missing one, but it's the price, it's the product, it's the promotion, and there's the place of distribution. And after all these years, I'm scratching my head and I'm thinking, wait a minute, sales is only one aspect of a degree I pursued. And I guess what I lead into, and I'm not sure who the person is in the movie, but again, during the trailer, and Coach, I use it all the time, and it's right here. It's like, we live in the United States of entertainment. The worst sin that you can commit is being boring. Right. And I'm just thinking, wow, here we are. Salespeople have been taking away the biggest thing that they have going. It's that face-to-face, cold call, warm call, email, phone call. It's all been taken away. And the reason I bring up that statement is how important it is for the marketing aspect of an organization to really broadcast the appeal, the interests, the profile of the person selling the product, the benefits, the value. I feel salespeople are just spending their time, looking through a bunch of stuff and getting rejected. But, that one statement to me means that if you are interesting and you're getting it broadcasted, people will reach out and they'll say, tell me about yourself. But, can you kind of address that? That's the big thing that I think I'm wrestling with. And I want to tell other salespeople is that there's so many other aspects besides just knocking on doors, making 1,000 calls, sending out 1,000 emails, all for pretty much a very small return. So Coach Miller, can you address what I just said? Is there something?
Yeah, I think that, well, first of all, it came from an interview of Inside Sports. So it was on HBO, and the gentleman that interviewed me was both a great political interviewer over the years and really quite an interesting man. And he said that to me. He said, the worst thing you can do is be boring. So he followed that up with a question where he said, you wouldn't encourage one bowler to throw another bowler down the lane, would you? And I said, I don't know if I'd encourage it, but I may not discount it. So what he was saying is, if you use the sports analogy, or if you use business analogy, or if you use communication or advertising analogies, what you find out is people always try to connect you to something else subtly. Let me use this example. Yesterday was watching a commercial for Buick, and Buick is is an outstanding automobile, and obviously they're trying to sell cars. So the Buick, when it pulled up into the garage or into the front of the house, it wasn't a 2-bedroom condominium. It was a beautiful, spectacular house. So it was their effort to try to make a connection between, if you buy this car, your lifestyle will be better. Now, is that true? Probably not. But at the end of the day, we spend a lot of time trying to find other ways to motivate and stimulate people to buy our product. And I think that what you quoted, Peter, and what most salespeople think, and this is just an old man's perspective of things that I've seen over the years, is that we fall into the category of, well, if the price is not right, they're not going to buy it. Or if it doesn't have the right characteristics, they're not going to buy it. And all of that is true to an extent. But the truth of the matter is that from time to time, I'm not suggesting you take their eye off the ball, but from time to time, you have to interject either humor or some type of communication method that gets them to not only think about buying the product, but they feel comfortable buying the product. And I think in order to do that, you have to be able to bring some differentiation. And without that differentiation, it's a problem. I mean, for a long time, we would call a Xerox copy a Xerox, even though there were a lot of machines that were Xerox. We would call, a hot chili pepper, one name, and that name became what a hot pepper meant to you. Kleenex. Kleenex is just a brand name of a tissue. There are a million tissues, but Kleenex did a good job of communicating that. So at the end of the day, I think it's important to remember that all of your conversations cannot be bland and just repetitive off of a script, but must include human interest. It must include something that gets their attention beyond and above, and to some degree takes their mind off of the seriousness of the purchase and gets them to discuss other things, which then make the conversation more internalized, more applicable. They feel more comfortable. And now when you make the ask isn't, hello, my name is, here's what this cost, and this is what you can get. There's got to be some human interest. And I think the technology age has taken some of that away. And I think that the reality of you being able to articulate to customers and get involved in other kinds of conversation pieces will enhance your opportunity to make a sale. So my issue is, how do I feel about myself? Do I exude that kind of confidence? Can I articulate what I have? Can I really communicate? What is the point of differentiation? And can I talk to you in a way that's personal? Can I make this between you and I? And then when you make a decision, it's much, 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 much easier to make that decision based on a series of other kinds of activities. And I think we miss the boat to a certain extent in not engaging people personally. Let me say this to you, and I think it's a good lesson for most salespeople, and certainly a good lesson for people trying to raise money. Telling the story is easy. Asking for the money is hard, okay? And I will say this, business is easy. It really and truly is. People are complicated. So at the end of the day, your ability to deal with people, your ability to articulate and to find the way in to those people is really critical to your outcome. It's not just a standard, here's the information, buy it, we're a big company, et cetera, et cetera. You've got to find a way to personalize it. And trust me, business acumen, your ability to understand the business is not complicated. Your ability to understand people is really complicated.
Coach Miller, I tell you, I do somehow, I don't know why, remember that statement said, would you know, the concept of throwing another bowler down the lane and doing
Right.
a strike. I don't know why I remember that, but it made me think through the years, meaning that seems to attract attention. You know, somebody just throwing a ball down a lane, how many people would that attract? If
Yeah.
Coach Miller picks me up and throws me down the lane and he does, you know, he gets a strike, crowds just start showing up.
Right.
And the reason I bring that up, it just came to my mind, you know, we've been taking away cold calls and emails and phone calls, and having the ability to say, call somebody and say, you know, this is Peter GODINEZ, and he says, who's this in regards to? I'm the guy that threw Coach Miller down the lane and got a strike. Would you put me
Right.
through?
Right.
It's like people somehow want a piece of that.
Yeah.
And I'm
Well,
not encouraging.
Yeah, there's no question about it. I mean, in the environment that I live in, as you know, I represent Andre Agassi and Steffi Graf, two of the great tennis players of all time, and as a couple, they're really an interesting group.
Mhm.
I don't underestimate the fact that I'm able to get through to people because of what I represent. I don't underestimate the fact that when I was the head of global sports marketing at Nike, that when I said the word Nike, it was like magic. What I didn't forget was the fact that I don't know if I was making the impression or what I was doing and representing was making the impression. But either way, I seized on those things to bring up practical issues and to bring up how working at Nike or working with Andre and Stephanie is no different than working with you. Working with people who have the same loves, the same affections, care about their children the same way, have the same problems, maybe not on the same scales, but we all have those difficulties. So the point I'm making is there's so many relatable factors in trying to get someone to identify with you and to create that equity, to create that indelibility is not as complicated as people think. It could be just, I served in the military and I see that you served in the military. I see that we're from the same neighborhood. There's got to be some level of continuity, some level of personal that comes in along with a professional in business. And if you lose that ability, then you become just one of a series of salesmen that are asking for something, and you're not giving them anything that they can get excited about or feel good about. So, and if it's not you, then it could be a current, a current circumstance or happening. Something's going on in the world, or we're all affected by COVID. So you may open up by talking about COVID and how difficult it's been and share some experiences. There are so many other things to selling than just product. A product is inanimate and really doesn't speak. You are speaking for the product, and your ability to articulate that and to line that product up with some personal circumstance is really the key to success.
No, I would build on what you're saying, Coach Miller. I mean, I'm not going to be able to change the title salesperson to something else. But, you know, I believe, in my opinion, in this world that we're going through change, that you have to be more than just somebody selling something. You know, you
100%.
need to be working with marketing. You need to be working with other people who are touching your clients.
Right.
You know, you need to keep good records in your CRM.
Right.
You know, you need to have a digital presence. And the only thing I can actually come up with, and it came from one of my other mentors in business after I left your leadership, I'll give his credit, Dan Durbeck always used the word quintessential salesperson. And to me, that kind of addresses, maybe that's what you want to be moving forward. because the old song that mamas don't let your babies grow up to be cowboys. I hear a lot of songs, mamas don't let your babies grow up to be salespeople because, all they're trying to do is slam stuff past you.
Right.
So what you're seeing, Coach Miller, is really helping me and to change the imagery and the responsibility that people who choose to go into the sales profession need to step up to, and need not just to get out of the focus of just showing up interrupted, thinking somebody's going to take your phone call, or think somebody's going to respond to the over 200 emails that you're in competition with. And I like what you're talking about. You got to be somewhat entertaining, because if you can entertain somebody, at that point, you can actually present them if they're interested. And I wanted to build on, meaning that if, I'm sure Andre Agassi and Steffi Graf has an easier time calling somebody and saying, Andre Agassi's on the line, would you like to speak to him? Versus just Peter Godinez. Well, who's he?
Right. No.
So
You're making a great point. It's not only entertaining. It's the relationship and connection to people. I think that we spend an inordinate amount of time, either because we're, I don't want to say lazy, but because we've been doing the same thing repetitively. The joy in all of it and the ability to get past the mundane is to find something, as I said earlier, to find something you have in common, to find something that is something, if you don't have it in common personally, you certainly have it in common on a daily basis in terms of just dealing with the world and the circumstances that occur, et cetera, et cetera. So I really believe that you can give someone bad news in a really great way if you have the skill to modify your message to get the message across, but also to give them some peace of mind. And what I mean by that is that over the years, I've coached a lot of athletes, and I've coached a lot of people that have worked to get in vice president and president jobs, et cetera, et cetera. And what ends up happening is that you may have to give them tough love or tough information from time to time, but there's no reason you can't end with, but I will tell you what, I'm here to help you figure it out. This is difficult, but I'm here to try to work through these barriers. I'm here because we're in this together. I'm here because I felt the same way you did a while ago. So it's a matter of getting your point across, articulating the essence of what it is you're trying to sell or do, but modifying it and mitigating some of the risk by finding personal connection. And I'm going to go back and say it again. Business is just not that complicated. People are complicated, and figuring out people is really what success is all about.
Wow.
When someone comes to me and asks me for an investment, we do millions of dollars of investments on an annual basis. Andre and myself and Stephanie and then our team, we evaluate the person that brings us the information, not the idea itself. Is this person dedicated to what it is they're bringing us? Is this person going to spend 24 hours, 7 days a week on the wall working, this investment? Are they people we can trust? There are so many great ideas and so many great products in the world that one of the things to break through that sameness is either through personality, through conversation, through the idea of being honest, through the idea of you being there when they need you. Those are the things you need to supplement just the information itself. And if you're able to do that, then you have a chance.
That's powerful. And you just somehow wrapping it up. I appreciate this time. And I know a lot of people who are watching this are my fellow comrades, from Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, and even to this day. And so I wrap up and I know maybe you can't give an answer to it, but at the end of this particular presentation. I mean, you're kicking the gluteus maximus minimus of these professional bowlers. And in the last 5 seconds, you say, good evening, have a nice evening. You smile and they feel loved. I mean,
Right.
is there a method to that madness? I mean, I've always been intrigued by that it used to do that to us when we were athletes. We'd be scared out of our mind, not feeling real loved. And in a second, Coach Miller, you changed it saying, he does love me. So is there something you can say to that? And I want to just kind of wrap up with that particular question.
Well, I think that's a good observation, Peter. I think that there's a couple of things here. And again, I think that some of the things I say may be redundant, or you may wonder where they come from. Number one is that everyone wants to be loved. Everyone wants to feel good. But giving people bad reviews or being hard on people is tough. And some coaches and some individuals, some bosses feel that that's what you need. I feel it's a combination of the two. I feel when I was at Nike, I had a series of people write me letters, not hundreds, but a series of people write me letters and say to me, no one has ever said no nicer. And I think the bottom line is I think in all situations, there are win-wins. I want to get my point across. I want to put the person on notice, but I want to tell them that I'm telling them this because I care about them. I'm telling them this because I really feel that you can be successful and you can do something special. The time you need to worry is when I don't talk to you at all. As long as I'm talking to you, we have got a chance. And together we have a much better chance than any one of us individually. Because when that athlete looks to the sideline or that salesperson looks to their home office, they want to have confidence in the sideline and in their home office. They want to know that they're going to get information that is going to help them be better. And as a result, being critical may help them, but being critical and not softening it, but letting them know the criticism is coming from your heart as opposed to just your anger is really, really incredibly powerful. And it's something that I think we have to recognize. And again, I'll finish up with this fact. Coaching, teaching, selling, running a business, for all of those people out there, I am telling you what, it's pretty easy. It is not complicated. It really and truly isn't. What's complicated is to elevate people's spirit, to get them to buy into what you're doing and to understand why you're doing it. And if you can do that, you can be successful. And I guess the last point is, you put together a business plan and you put your squares in there and you have your people that you're putting in there and you have a great business plan. But if those squares are filled with piss ants, you have no chance. Now, you could have an average business plan with a lot of really smart, great, energetic, enthusiastic people, and you've got a chance. At the end of the day, there are no great jobs, just great people.
Wow. Thank you, Coach Miller. I mean, I think that should be a wrap. I don't ask any more questions that may ruin this, but Coach Miller, obviously, you know what I think you respect, my care, my love for you. Thank you so much for giving this information. It's my job now to make sure it gets out and people take it and implement it and make their lives better. So with that, I'll say thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Peter, for giving me the opportunity to speak, and hopefully it helps some people and it can make a difference. Thank you.